welcome everyone to the second ever episode of the Formula E show. Still the brand new podcast on this channel. I love it. Enjoyed it so much. Today we've got the brand new graphics package that I was on about last week. That should be up and running today. That should be juicy, should be interesting. Hopefully you guys like that. Big fan of what's going on here at the moment on this channel. We hit 1k subs earlier this week. Still can't get my head around that. We've been going for 5 months and we've already hit 1k. Baffling stuff, but thank you so much. And to celebrate that, we have launched this new podcast today. As you can tell by the title, as you might be able to tell by the thumbnail, we're talking about the future of Formula E and what I think Formula E should be. I'll go into a bit more detail about what I mean by that in a second. But guys, thank you for watching. I'm planning on this being around half an hour to an hour every single Thursday. We've got guests planned in the future. I imagine guests will start coming on around sort of episode 5, I would imagine. We've got a few guys lined up. I don't want to give it away just yet, but we have some very exciting guests coming on the channel, which is nice, which is really nice to see some of you guys back in the channel so early. So let's crack on with today's topic. So if you haven't seen the Formula E show yet, or you didn't see episode 1, this is a bit more of a casual, laid-back sort of talking video. Not so serious with hard facts every single time. You know, it doesn't have to be 100% serious like some of the other videos are, but it's just sort of a casual conversation about Formula E for about half an hour to an hour. That's what I want it to be. Like I said a minute ago, in future, I would like some guests, and we've got that planned. And then that should make it a little bit more interesting with different people's views and opinions. But first I wanted to just, for the first few episodes, get a ground in so you guys can learn a bit about Formula E, learn about my knowledge of Formula E, because it's not foolproof. There is gaps, but that's what the plan is for the next few weeks. So let's crack on with today's topic. Hopefully that intro wasn't too awkward, too peculiar. But let's crack on with today's topic, which is, like I said, the future of Formula E. So, the story behind the thinking of today's episode actually comes from a guy named Simon Larson. Now, he commented on a video a long time ago. This might have been 2 or 3 months ago. And it was when I was asking for documentary ideas. And he said it would be great if I did a video based around what I would love for Formula 1 to be like. What I would like Formula 1 to be right now and in the future. And at the time, I thought that was a great idea. So I saved his whole response, which is a mighty response from I've never seen a comment this big. It's a full essay, but I saved it. And it's been here for ages on my laptop. And I've been thinking of different ways that I could do a video on it. And I thought, I could just do a straight video. And for Formula 1, I probably will. In probably a couple of weeks, I will whack out a full video about Formula 1. But I thought this would be a great idea for just the second podcast for you guys to learn about Formula E, what it's currently like, what I would like it to be, and what it could be in the future. So Simon's idea, and the official title he sort of said was, what F1 could be like if we could rewrite the rules. That's the idea. So I'm switching that up for this podcast, as you can probably guess, because it's the Formula E show. I'm changing that to what Formula E could be like if we could rewrite the rules. Now, the headings that Simon has used is cars, engines, media, qualifying, and the race. And he's also got what he's called the super finish, which is sort of what I'm going to class as the gimmick. Okay, so most motor racing has some sort of gimmick that goes with it. And so that's what I'm going to class that bit as the gimmick. So that's what we're really going to be going through today, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm also probably going to mention things like how big I think the season should be, how many drivers should be on the grid, how many teams, that sort of thing. So we'll just see as we go along what I can come up with, and hopefully it's a great first proper episode of the Formula E show. Really excited. So let's crack on with it. This might be the sort of thing as well that I ask future guests, so I might ask what their opinions are And I might redo this episode a little bit later down the line with a couple of guests, so I don't know. But let's crack on. So, the first thing is the Formula E cars. And if you don't know, we've had the same cars in Formula E, the same sort of design roughly, since Season 1. We're now in Season 4. Next season, for Season 5, we've got the brand new Gen 2 cars. The Batmobile cars, as I like to call them. Beautiful bits of machinery, they really are. Perhaps a little too chunky. They have the halo. They do have the halo, which is interesting for sure. But I think looking at that car right now, that fits in a lot more seamlessly than it does in a Formula 1 car. 100%. And the actual footage we've seen of the Gen 2 car looks fantastic. We've seen some liveries for this car, and they all look pretty fab, to be fair. I think we've seen Audi, Jaguar and Nissan all release theirs. Fantastic car. And for me, I don't think I'd want much more on a Formula E car. Formula E, if you don't know, all the teams run exactly the same chassis. Which, if you don't know what a chassis is, that's just the main sort of bodywork, what the car looks like. They've all got to run the same. They can all have their own livery, which is paint jobs, stickers, sponsors, that sort of thing. But the actual design is exactly the same. That is for sure something in the future I think should be sort of looked at. I think Formula 1 does it great. Does that vast array of designs. There is a basic design you've got to sort of stick to. You know, to the naked eye, most Formula 1 cars look the same. And for a very, very casual fan, you would think they're all the same. They're just different colours, but it's just not the case. Formula E, that is the case. And you know what? It has led to very close races, which is something Formula 1 has not been able to provide on a consistent basis like Formula E has for a very long time. So, big fan of these Gen 2 cars, for sure. I absolutely love them. Just look at them. I mean, I can't say that much more, but it's a fantastic car. The only thing is that in the future, I'd be surprised if they didn't make it so that the teams didn't all have the same chassis, but we'll have to see. Because this chassis, for sure, will be judged after its first couple of races. We've seen the new chassis in Formula 1 over the past couple of years really get hammered because of the lack of overtaking. And if that happened in Formula E, then that will just put people off. You know, Formula E is in this early stage, the birth of the sport, really. And they can't put anyone off. They have to be enticing as many viewers as possible. And at the moment, if that means giving every car the same chassis, then I'm all for it. You know, every race, we've seen fantastic driving pretty much this season in Formula E, and pretty much in every season. Perhaps Marrakesh this year wasn't a particularly good example, but I thought that was more the circuit than the actual cars. But at least cars are still overtaking, and if there is an issue like last year in Formula 1, but in Formula E cars can't pass each other, then why is anyone going to get invested in this new sport? It's just not going to happen, is it? So I think for sure the Gen 2 cars, that won't be an issue. And if it is, then all these big names, Mercedes, Nissan, that have invested into joining Formula E for this Gen 2 car, they're going to be regretting that pretty quickly. But I don't think that'll be an issue. Under this topic of cars, I'm also going to mention the teams. So we currently have a nice amount of teams in Formula E. 10 to be exact, the exact same as Formula 1. Now, next season, we do have Nissan coming to the sport, and in the future, we also have Mercedes joining the sport. So in theory, that should mean there's 12 teams, 24 drivers. Renault, however, Renault Edams, will be leaving the sport at the end of the season, or at least it looks very likely that they will not be staying for the future. Which, to me, I think is quite surprising, to be perfectly honest with you. They've not looked the best this season, but last season and the season before, they've almost looked formidable. They've won every single Constructors' Championship. And yes, they're doing this big push for Formula 1 now, but I still don't see why they don't remain as the best team in Formula E. Seems a bit daft in my opinion, but hey-ho, they're Renault. They obviously know better than me their financial situation, what their plans are for the future. So, hey, can't judge them there, but that's still is a net 11 teams on the grid. I did love it in Formula 1 when, in I believe 2010, was it 13 teams we had on the grid, 26 drivers? That was madness. I did enjoy that. Although the bottom 3 teams, you barely saw them, I am a big fan of the more drivers, the better. I think, you know, you're pushing it once you get to about 15 teams. That's a bit much. Especially on Formula E circuits where they are street circuits, every single one. And so that in itself is a question mark on how many guys you have. Because obviously the more drivers you have, the more likely there is of mistakes, more likely for crashes. And on these narrow circuits, you can't be having that every single race. And we saw last weekend in Rome, the big pile-up between the two Neo boys, Nick Heifeld, Jose Maria Lopez, I believe, was involved as well. And that was only with 20 guys in the field. And there was a 4-car pile-up. So Formula E, they've got to be careful with the amount of teams they put in for sure. I think, personally, 12's probably enough. I do think that's probably enough. I think that's all right. There's only one customer team in the sport, and that is Techeetah. However, next season they do look like they're going to be moving to DS Power, same as DS Virgin. So there'll still be a customer team. But it's great to see in Formula E that just because I've really struggled to say that. There's such a pain. Techeetah, even though they're a customer team, they're top in the driver's standings. They are smashing it. So that's great to see in Formula E, and I think it's something that Formula 1 should learn from. We've seen in the past that factory teams in Formula 1 aren't always the top teams. You know, you think back to the likes of 2010, 2011, 2012, McLaren were ahead of Mercedes, and McLaren were a customer team of Mercedes. So those were the good days of Formula 1, really. Although this season and last season, for me, Formula 1, it's getting better. It's getting better. It went through a bit of a dip. Even the early stages of last season went through a bit of a dip, but 2018 so far has been mega. Formula E, pretty much been mega the whole time. Not quite the standard of the drivers in Formula 1, 100%. You know, there's been some very rookie mistakes in Formula E. Even last weekend, like I said, in Rome, for sure, some rookie mistakes. And that's something that arguably could be teething problems. And you're always going to get that with a sport starting out so early. That lure isn't there. And with big names like Nissan and Mercedes coming, that only helps. There's also been news about the drivers. I think it's a good little segue to talk about the drivers now, because some of the boys, some of the big names, are out of a drive for next season. You look at Sebastian Buemi and Nico Prost. So Buemi looks pretty much set for Nissan. That's been reported so many times that it's pretty much a given conclusion. Piquet Jr., is he happy at Jaguar? Could he be joining Buemi at Nissan? The issue I'm thinking is that Nico Prost, the guy who almost won the first ever Formula E race, the guy who in the first season was winning races, I think has the longest point streak in Formula E. I'm pretty sure, unless that's been beaten now. But this season, he's been awful. He's 18th in the standings. The only people below him are Tom Blomqvist, rookie, Luca Filippi, rookie, Kobayashi and Nicholas Yanni, who have only done 2 races. And that's a whole different ballgame. But the reason I wanted to quickly just do a segue into the drivers, under the bit about the cars, mainly is because there isn't a topic about the drivers, but it's something that I read this week about Felipe Massa joining Formula E. And this sort of mixes to what I was just on about with, you know, the sport, before it does anything drastic with the cars, needs to establish itself. And with what's been reported, Felipe Massa joining Formula E is exactly what they need. 100% that's what they need. And that's what Formula E needs to start right now. Sniping these F1 drivers as soon as they're not given a seat in Formula 1, as soon as they retire from Formula 1. That's what Formula E needs to do. For example, Kimi Raikkonen. Now, I don't see Kimi going to Formula E. I will not see that. I cannot see that whatsoever. I just do not think he'd fit in with Formula E. But, bear with me a second, if he did go to Formula E, it is known, and even if you're going to get angry, it has been statistically shown that the most popular driver in Formula 1 is Kimi Räikkönen. He has the biggest fan base of any driver, whether that's because he's a cool character like he is, the Iceman, or because he's been in F1 so long. He's a world champion for Ferrari, great guy. But if he went to Formula E, all of those fans, those die-hard fans, including myself back in the day, they're going to watch Formula E. And if Formula E can get drivers like Raikkonen, like Massa, even Felipe Massa, one of the most beloved drivers on the grid, if he can go to Formula E, just think of how many people will say, oh, Massa's gone to Formula E, did you hear? Oh, well, you know what? Let's give it a watch. You know, that's going to happen. That is for sure going to happen. And it'd be fantastic. That's exactly what Formula E needs to do, because no matter how good their races are, drivers are what bring in the crowds. That's in my opinion anyway, but I think that is, let's be honest here, do you watch Formula 1 for the constructors' stand-ins? Or do you watch Formula 1 for the drivers' stand-ins? Just an interesting question, actually. I'd be interested to know if anyone does watch it from constructors, but I know myself, of course I watch it for the drivers. The drivers' world title is pretty much what most people care about, what most people remember. You know, if I said, who won the Constructors' World Championship in, well, let's pick a good year here that wasn't Ferrari, in the year 2000, are you going to know that? Maybe that's a bit old. But, okay, let's pick 2009. Who won the Drivers' World Stand-ins? Jenson Button. Who won Constructors? It isn't as easy. That might just be myself. You know, I'm not even sure off the top of my head. I would put money on it being Brawn, but Red Bull were mighty close. But, yeah, Brawn, pretty sure. That's a bit daft if I'm wrong. Now I feel like a bit of an idiot. Anyway, you get my point. It's the drivers that people want to come and see. And, yeah, Felipe Massa, if they can get him in, that would be amazing. It looks like the reports have said that it's Mahindra he's most likely to go to. Interesting choice. Best suit for him, apparently. That's what they've been saying. It's the best suited team for Felipe, for sure. As he said, he'll only join Formula E if he can be in a competitive car. And it doesn't look like many other teams can consistently offer him that. You know, that have a space, I will add there. Mahindra, Felix Rosenqvist, I've said many a time, on his day, is the best driver in Formula E. I think that's almost a foregone conclusion. There are some that are close, but I think if Rosenqvist had luck all his way, yeah, he is the best driver. Anyway, his teammate, Nick Heidfeld, veteran in Formula 1, now veteran in Formula E, has been there since day one. But he's not got the pace. He's not got the speed that he used to have. And you know what? We've seen this season in Formula 1 and in Formula E that a rear gunner, two teammates that are quick, can really make a difference in a race. You know, it has obviously been shown before in the past, but this season, in both sports, it seems to have been a big talking point. And we've seen the likes of Audi really show that off this season. Techeetah really show that off as well this season. Those two are smashing it. Because, well, Audi early season, not so much, but recently those two smashing it. Because they've got two drivers that have the pace. And if Mahindra can get Massa alongside Rosenqvist for sure, that would be very cheeky. Indeed. That would really as well, that would show us how quick was Massa. How good was that Williams car? How quick is Lance Stroll? Shows you all that, but it also shows you how quick is Felix Rosenqvist. And I think that's what we'd all be interested to see. How good is that Mahindra car? Because Massa might show up, absolutely smack around Felix Rosenqvist, absolutely might smack around the whole grid, win every single race, every single pole position. Happy days. That could always happen. But it would just be a huge thing for the sport if they could get in Felipe Massa, for sure. I think that'd be great. But Simon, he wrote, because Simon, if it was confusing there, Simon Larson was the one who wrote this whole thing. In his sort of subheading about cars in Formula 1, he starts off by saying, all parts of the car that in no way enhance the audience experience are standardised. So, I just wanted to quickly mention that quote there, because that sort of, to me, sort of says he likes it sort of the Formula E way, where bits and bobs that don't really change what the audience sees or make it worse, they should just be made the same. And so that sort of just proves my point that Formula E, if they want this core audience, they need to make sure that all the cars, not exactly the same, of course, because they've all got the different motors, engines, power units. That's the word I was looking for there, power units, which all makes the cars perform differently. But the key thing is that the chassis is the same. And I think for Formula E, for now, for the next 5 seasons, I think they all need to be the same. And in future, they need to think about changing that for sure. And, oh yeah, I haven't even mentioned this. I can't believe this. Formula E, if you don't know, if you haven't seen it before, or you're only just starting to watch Formula E, they have to change their cars in the middle of the race to a second car because the battery is not big enough. Next season, that won't be happening. And so, actually, this is a good reason I remembered this, actually, which will mean, unlikely that there'll be pit stops. Does that mean tyres will come into play? Maybe. Does that mean the pit stops are sort of like a recharge sort of thing? So where teams in Formula 1 used to put in fuel, will it be a thing where you can recharge the battery? That'd take too long, surely. I mean, I'm not up to date 100% obviously with all the tech in Formula E, but surely that would take too long recharging the battery in the middle of a race. But it'd be interesting because it's obviously safer than refueling. That's why it's not in Formula 1 anymore, because it's so dangerous. But recharging middle of the race adds that bit of strategy. You know, do you start the race with heavy recharge, heavy battery? No, because then if I think, what am I on about? Because it's not heavy, is it? So it wouldn't make a difference. So that's just stupid of me. But yeah, that was stupid. I feel like a bit of a muppet now. Anyway, there could be something to do with that. Okay, so halfway through they've got to recharge anyway. Feel like a right idiot. Anyway, I'm trying to think what they're going to do for pit stops. Tyres is probably the biggest go-to. Michelin are the ones who currently do the tyres for Formula E. I don't think next season they'll be making a big change. And it could be the first season of Formula E where we don't see any pit stops. Unless they keep it that they have 2 cars, and that if there is any damage, they can change cars. Because in Formula E we have seen that, you know, crashes do happen every single race. And I mean every single race. And drivers do have to change. But even then, that seems a bit daft, crashing and then being able to get back in. So, Formula E, pit stops will have to be added in the future, for sure. You know, I'm not a huge fan of how it is now, where you just see all this daft jumping out of a car, running across the garage and jumping into a second car. Looks a bit weird, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think it needs to happen, pit stops, and we'll see next season what they do, what they come up with. I don't believe there's been anything official yet saying what's going to happen, but if you guys do know of anything or have any ideas, I'd love to know about that, because that's something that I think definitely needs looking at. And they'll obviously know that, because the pit stop sometimes, if it's a boring race, can really spice things up, for sure, in Formula E. Formula 1 as well, obviously, last time out in China in Formula 1, that's what made the whole race, made it arguably a classic, was because of the pit stops. And Formula E needs the pit stops, I think, some of them for sure. We've seen drivers go a little bit longer on their first car to have that little bit more power to be able to push later on in the race. So, yes! Maybe it wasn't an idiot earlier then, because if they've got more power in the car, they don't have to lift as much earlier on and regenerate enough energy. So maybe it could be that they have to recharge halfway through the race, because they wouldn't have to be managing as much. So maybe I wasn't much of an idiot as I thought. I'm still an idiot, of course, but not as much as I thought. Anyway, that should cover all the sort of area around the cars. I can't think of anything else too much. You know, we don't want to be seeing any DRS getting into the sport, any KERS or anything like that. Something that is in the sport I will be moving on to later, but that needs to be gone. And if you know what I'm on about, be prepared, because a rant is brewing. I can feel it. I can smell it. The rant is brewing. But anyway, we'll move on. So that is the cars sorted. So the next bit was engines. Formula E, I think, will always have battery engines, of course. Not really too much to talk about there. He has spoke about Simon Larson in his sort of ideas for Formula 1, is that, let's have a look here. When the day comes, it's quicker to drive a lap on Silverstone with only electric motors and fuel-like batteries. Formula E and Formula 1 will go together to form a full electric pinnacle. Okay, so he's on about there that Formula E and Formula 1 will join. That's going to be next week's topic in this podcast, so look out for that. I'll enjoy that one for sure. So he thinks that after the hybrid engines in Formula 1, they'll just go to a Formula E engine. I mean, Formula E engines, that's new tech. You know, we don't really know how they're going to evolve in the future, what's going to happen. I think the big thing for them will be sort of this recharging thing that I was on about. I think if they can find an engine that they can recharge mid-race, that's going to change up the dynamic completely. But it's an area, like I say, it's so new. It's so new. I know we're in the 4th season of Formula E, but it's still ridiculously new. If any of you guys do have a really good knowledge about these battery engines, please get in touch and tell me what you think they can do to evolve these engines, because none of us know what's going to happen in the future. You know, when we were using V8 engines in Formula 1, I don't think anyone guessed hybrid engines, obviously V6 is a go-to, but hybrid engines, I don't think anyone expected that, especially way back when V8s first came in. So it's very difficult to tell about the future of Formula E engines, but they'll always be battery, I'm pretty sure. But I do imagine it'll be something that in the future they would change up a bit. I can't see them using the same engines throughout Formula E. That's an awful explanation I've used for the future of the engines in Formula E, but I really couldn't tell you. I think I've given a good enough explanation, right? So we'll move on to media. Okay, I'm really looking forward to this one. So I'm going to read out the whole of Simon's response to do with the media in Formula 1, and I'll try and convert it to Formula E. So this is Simon's response. Media producers will have a look at driver saves energy at particular stage of the race. I'm reading this word for word, by the way. It's English is a little bit dodgy, but it was a comment on YouTube, so spell checking and all that don't really matter too much. But yeah, media producers will have a look at which driver saves energy at a particular stage of the race and can switch over the broadcast to this car to show the audience how the two drivers' energy sites relate to each other. Okay, so before attempting an overtake, I understand that there. So as not to reveal the backward driver's tactics too early. Okie dokie. Even the fuel levels and fuel consumption of drivers are shown more clearly in the shipment, more like they do in Formula E. So basically, what he's talking about there is that what they do in Formula 1 is very different to Formula E. In Formula E, they can show two cars on the screen at once. They can show two different points of view. And so I thought you had more in there. But anyway, my response, my version for Formula E, the media, they do it fantastically already. Formula E media is incredible. The way they live stream the races on YouTube, live stream qualifying, live stream practice, Insta stories, always at the race circuit, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Even the podium itself is screens that move, show the driver's face, show the driver's name, show number one, show the flag. It's incredible. And Formula E, yes, we know they're at the forefront of technology, and everything they do in the media, I've never seen anything go wrong or be bad. Never, ever. They've produced documentaries about climate change. They did that big thing, I think it might have been with Amazon Prime they did it with, where they went up to the Arctic. Lucas de Grassi, Alejandro Agag, the big boss of Formula E, they went up to the Arctic. They drove a Formula E car in the Arctic, and I can't remember why they did it, but it was to show climate change and what a difference it's making in the world. And that's what Formula E is trying to show and trying to make a difference about. It's trying to really encourage electric cars, and they're doing a great job of it so far. And like I say, the use of the media is great. Something I think Formula E could start expanding into is, which I think you might be interested to hear this, but I think something they do not have a big presence in is magazines and books. So you're probably thinking, what is he on about? What on earth is he on about? But the thing is with Formula One, and this might just be because the fan base is so much bigger. I mean, it's probably, how much bigger do you reckon? 100 times bigger? Maybe, that's a bit much, but everyone knows Formula One, I'm pretty sure, but not everyone knows of Formula E. And for some reason, like I say, it might just be because of the amount of fans, but Formula E does not have those knowledgeable things, knowledgeable sites, knowledgeable magazines, knowledgeable books, anything that you can learn about the sport. Now, the official page, Formula E page, website, I think it's a bit dodgy. I'm not a huge fan of that website, which is interesting considering that's their thing, being amazing at technology. Their website, in my opinion, ain't the best. Anyway, there's not enough information. You know, you look at the news channel on the Formula E website, and there's probably not been a story on that for weeks, and a big story for months. There's nothing. There's nothing that tells you about potential deals in the pipeline. No websites really that you can go and check out driver deals in the future. It's really, obviously Autosport, Motorsport TV do bits and bobs, but it's nothing major. And you know what, I think that's what they need to do a big push in the future for sure. You know, a couple of years ago, and let's say more than a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, when I was starting secondary school. That's longer than 5 years ago. What am I on about? Time flies. But when I was starting secondary school, I used to be really into Formula One. I had a particular mate. We were both really into Formula One, and I always used to get my F1 news and gossip from BBC. And all it was a daft little page on BBC, and it's Formula One gossip. I still look at it now, full of ridiculous stories, but it's little things like that that get younger kids into it. Accessible information for everyone. And for Formula E, it's just not there. It's not quick enough. It's not consistent enough. And I think, like I say, it is because the fan base isn't there. But I think as soon as they start doing a big push into the mediums and platforms that already exist, then I think that's going to be great. Formula One books. I know they're not the most popular in the world, and I know that because I've done book reviews and they're not the most popular videos. But I really enjoy it. And for me, that's a big way I learn about Formula One. I've read recently on this channel Mark Webber's autobiography, and that was really interesting, learning about the Red Bull programme. Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, Sebastian Vettel, learning about all of them. I've recently, even more recently, just about to finish The Mechanic by Mark Priestley. Mechanic who was McLaren, now does a lot of work for Formula One on Sky, and he does some coverage of Formula E. Now, that book started off, I wasn't a huge fan. I finished off loving it, and would love it to keep going. So, those are the sort of things that teach you about Formula One and different sports, but they give you that insight that a TV can't. You know, the behind the scenes, the unseen stuff, that's what TV can't do sometimes. Access these areas that people who are working there can access. And like I say, it might just be because I have a particular love for reading Formula One, but I'd love to see a Formula E book come out. You know, Alejandro Agag, if he brought out something about setting up Formula E, just little things like that get people involved, get people interested. Because there's hundreds of Formula One books, and you know, I'm looking at my collection right now. I've got David Coulthard's autobiography, Jenson Button's autobiography right there. And I know they're going to be very similar sort of layout to Mark Webber's autobiography. Okay, so I'm also looking at my collection now, and I'm seeing a book about Total Competition from Ross Brawn, and that's all about how Ross Brawn managed a team. And we've also got a book from Adrian Newey, How to Build a Car, which is all about designing cars and stuff. So the ones I love are the ones that are a bit off topic. And Formula E, for me, and I think, you know, unfortunately, I don't really want to say this, but the older generation, those sort of things could entice people to watch Formula E. I really think they could. And the Formula E page itself on YouTube, they do a pretty good job. You know, they're not as good as Formula One, I would say. Oh, I don't know. It's tough because I feel Formula One, they put out videos all the time. Every single day it feels like now. They never used to, but now they do. Formula E, they do... You know, I think I've been harsh actually there. I'll take that back. Formula E's YouTube is very good. Formula 1 and Formula E is very good. And the fact that Formula E do live stream everything is great. They also do this... I think it's called Street Racers or something. It's like this sort of mini TV programme they sort of put on. Very interesting, for sure. I haven't quite got the grips with it, though, because I think it comes out before the weekend, but it never comes up in my sub box. So, yeah, that's obviously the medium they need to be pushing, and I'm fully aware of that. You know, before you guys say, oh, no one wants books, no one wants magazines. But I'm fully aware that social media is the way to go. You know, Facebook appears to be dying now, unfortunately, but Instagram, YouTube are the ways to go, and they're aware of that. I would just love it if they just did a little bit more for the... I don't want to call myself an older fan, because I'm just not, but you know what I mean. F1 Racing magazine's been going for years. If they just did a small Formula E sort of section in their magazine, if Formula E could get that in, if in the autosport, Formula E could make sure every single time there was a Formula E section, or if Formula E just themselves did a magazine, it would just, again, it would just encourage more people. That's what I'd love to see. And you know what, really there, I think I'm just nitpicking. I'm just nitpicking because they do their media and their advertising so well. It's just a tiny little thing I'd love, please. Alejandro Gag, please, man. I'd love a book. But yeah, media, spotless job. Spotless job. And now let's move on to our third topic, qualifying. Now, what can I say about the qualifying in Formula E? It's a concept I've learned and grown to love. I think it's great. But as a new fan, it's so difficult to understand what the hell is going on. So the idea is that in the championship there's 20 drivers. And the drivers go out in sets of 5. And it's to do with where you are in the championship. So you have 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 16 to 20th. And these groups are randomly shuffled in the order that the group goes out. It's hard to even explain. So they're randomly shuffled, and then the groups go out, one by one, the groups, and it's sort of a bit weird because obviously as the track sort of, as it goes on, the cars get quicker because the tracks have sort of warmed up a bit, there's a bit more grip on the circuit. So the last group is what you want to be, really. Less pressure on as well, or more in a way, but you know you're going to have the quicker time, so it's all a bit weird, to be perfectly honest with you. But anyway, out of all those sessions, the top 5 battle it out for Super Pole. They all got 1 lap to see who can get the quickest lap. So it's like one-shot quali on F1 games. And it's very confusing to work out what the hell's going on. It really is. And now, like I say, I love it. And I've explained it there dreadfully, and I'm very aware of that. But now I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a little bit of a gimmick that is a lot of fun. And, you know, it is known in Formula 1 that qualifying is nowhere near as popular as the race, and viewing figures say that. For us die-hard fans, qualifying is as important, but for most casual fans it's not. It's just the race that matters. And Formula E, I think they know that, and they're just putting a big emphasis on the race, which is fine for now. I think that will have to be changed in the future. I think it definitely will. I think a format more like Formula 1 is sensible, but it's street circuits, so there's always that issue with guys getting out the way. And we have seen in some circuits, like at the beginning of the season in China, that sometimes it is literally impossible to contact the guys on the radio. Well, I was going to continue the sentence, but yeah, it's impossible to contact the guys on the radio. And so that's just going to cause complications in itself. And so that's why they do it how they do it at the moment. But as in time, as that sort of technology gets better and better, I'd say a concept more like Formula 1 is going to be the norm. Yeah, it would make sense for the sport, but like I say, they need to build it in. And you know what? I do enjoy the gimmick. And you know what, if people learn to love it, like myself, then maybe they won't change it. But I think it'd be sensible to change it, just because I think, I always think with sport, it's unfair to give drivers an advantage through luck. So you get an advantage for going out later. I think that's so unfair. It does mix up the grid, which is great, but it's not cheating. But I hope you can understand what I'm on about there. It sort of just seems a bit, you know, imagine you were in a World Championship fight, and actually no, because I was going to, well, in theory, 6 drivers, let's say, could be in it for the championship. In theory, this could happen, right? They could be in it for the championship, and obviously the top 5 are the first out in qualifying, and then the guy in 6th, he's in the final group, so he gets through to Super Pole. It just seems a bit unfair. Not like match fixing or anything like that, but I hope you can understand what I'm on about there. Maybe I'm just having a go at something for no reason, but I just think it's a bit muggy, really. Anyway, I'll stop my rambling there, because that doesn't really sound like it's got much context, even in my head. So, hey-ho, yeah. I love Formula E quali, but definitely confusing to pick up the basics for sure. But their emphasis is the race, and, you know, you got to respect that, because that is where the fans are out. But let's move on to the race then. The races in Formula E are done by length, just like Formula 1, and that's fine. No issue with that whatsoever. They're usually around an hour and a half, Formula E races, which is obviously shorter than Formula 1. And for casual fans, I'm sure that's a big, big plus. Big plus. Because people dislike that about Formula 1. You know, if ever I've asked people about Formula 1 and they've said, oh, it's rubbish, it's, you know, you're wasting 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I think, but that's the magic of it. You want it to be long. You want to get as much action and drama, tactics, strategy out as possible. In Formula E, that's not so possible because you have limited strategy. And they're obviously as well, they're held back by the battery in their car, so maybe next season it could be looked at. But I think at the moment it's just a nice sort of amount where it is, to be perfectly honest with you. And the race itself, I think, set out quite well. The starting sort of, there's no formation lap or anything like that, which is quite good. I've gone through the pit stops already, so I can't think of anything else major off the top of my head that I'd like to be changed in the race, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, it says here about the point system. I think the point system's really good in Formula E. You get 3 points, I believe, or 2 points for pole position. It's one of those two. I should have looked that up before before I did this. I believe it's 2 points for pole position, 1 point for fastest lap in the race, 25 if you win. So it's the same as Formula 1, but you also get points for winning and pole position. And I think that's quite good. I quite like that. Adds a little bit extra. And you know what? Formula E don't want to be the same as Formula 1, and that's cool. That's fair enough. I don't blame them. They want to have their own identity. They don't want to be known as Electric Formula 1, which many people call it that, but they don't want to be known as that. They want to be known as FE, or for Formula E. They want to be known as their own thing. And so little changes like that are nice, and I do like that, actually. Would it work in Formula 1? Yeah, for sure. It would, and that point for fastest lap as well, for some drivers, we've seen it with Lucas di Grassi this season, great car, difficult circumstances, and he's got points just for getting that fastest lap, and it's really helped him out and helped him now at the end of the season propel up that leaderboard. So I like this system. I don't think it needs changing, and the race itself, like I say, pretty solid. And like I've gone through the pit stops, and next season will be a big learning curve for Formula E with that Gen 2 car. And so I imagine it'll be season 6 we'll see quite a few changes, especially to do with the race, pit stops, those sort of things. And the last topic then we need to move on to before we end this is the gimmick section. Now, what Simon talks about is what he's called a super finish, and it's sort of this, it's an interesting concept. I'm not a huge fan of it. Well, I'm not a fan of it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I can't quite work out if it's after the race or the final 10 laps of the race. I think it's the final 10 laps. And what it is you sort of end the race early. Then the teams get like a chance to refuel the car or battery and the tyres and all that. So pretty much start the car up from fresh as best they can. Then the grid gets sort of turned around, right? So whoever was in first is now in last, and then the whole field drives the same track the wrong way round. And he says here, since the top guys start last, we can look forward to as much overtaking as possible. I don't think that'll be the case, so I'm not a huge fan of the super finish idea, but I'm a fan of a gimmick, and I think it always helps when a sport has a gimmick, and in Formula E, it is the... can't believe I'm talking about it again. It's the fan boost. And you know what, like I just said, I usually enjoy a gimmick in the sport. The fan boost, no. I do not enjoy that trash. That thing is the biggest waste of time, match fixing, bonkers rule I've ever seen in a sport. Now, I'm calm today. I've gone off about it in videos before, but I'm quite calm today about the fan boost. Because the idea is there. You know, they want fans to interact with the racing, and they want fans to have sort of this power that they can affect the result. And so the fan boost works in that way. I just don't think it's needed. Personally, I just don't think it's needed in a sport where these drivers are on the edge, and you could win a world championship because you're more popular than the other guy. Does that mean Formula E is a literal popularity contest? Yes and no. I mean, it's just so stupid in my idea, and we've seen last race in Rome how much of a difference the fan boost makes. It's, like I say, it's cool that it's a thing, you know, and I love the idea and the thinking behind it of getting fans involved with the race as it unfolds. That's fantastic. Whoever came up with that he's done well at marketing for sure. He is a top dog in marketing, but in racing, I'm not too sure he knows what he's on about, because that is just ridiculous. And I could talk for days about the fan boost, and every time we get a guest on this show, I'm going to ask them about the fan boost, for sure. I want to know what they think about it, because at first, when I first watched Formula E, I thought it was cool. Like I say, I thought, you know what, this is interesting, and I've always, to be hypocritical, I've always voted in the fan boost. I've always voted in the fan boost because I want to see my favourite guy win, of course, and so... yeah, I've really been a hypocrite there, haven't I? But you want to see your favourite guy win, and it's not like if I don't vote and someone else that I don't like gets fan boost, then I'll be annoyed. So it serves its purpose in keeping Formula E fresh in your mind, making you involved in the sport, and I love that. Just needs to be tinkered with a bit. Either it doesn't make as much of an effort, or I don't want to say you give them more battery power overall, because even that is a popularity contest, but overall the rule should go, in my opinion. Could be replaced by another gimmick. I think, unfortunately, I imagine I'm going to get hate for this, but I think DRS is a better gimmick than the fan boost. Obviously, marketing, DRS is a nightmare. Everyone hates it, but the concept that you have to get close enough, you actually have to have skill to get close enough in the first place, then you can use it to pass, I think it's better than just being given this boost because you're a popular guy. You know, it'd be interesting to see in Formula 1 who gets given that, but I imagine it'll be both Red Bull drivers every weekend, and Fernando Alonso is what I would guess, maybe Raikkonen. Well, I don't imagine Raikkonen dive bombing or anything with it, but he might. But Formula E, it just doesn't work for me. It does get people involved though, and like I said, it's still this early part of the sport, this early time, and so in theory there, it's serving its purpose for sure. But I'm just not a fan. I'm not a fan, and so I'm really struggling to think of an alternative sort of gimmick that they could have, because, like I say, the idea of it is perfect, and I just think they need to put it in some sort of different way, which obviously off the top of my head I can't think about, and that's why the fan boost is in there, because there isn't an alternative. I'd love to know what you guys think, just while we're rounding off today's podcast, or the main story of today's podcast anyway, is what gimmick do you think Formula E should have? Are you a fan of the fan boost? Do you think it should have some sort of other gimmick that goes with it, like the super finish, mentioned by Simon Larson? You know, is there something like that? Something really crazy that you think should go in? Maybe sort of mixing Simon's idea into Formula E. They have a race, and then for the final 10 laps, they all have their second car. Nah, I don't like that. Don't like that. I don't know. I'd love to know what you guys would like to put in as a gimmick in Formula E, or if you think it needs one at all. But yeah, that is the main meat and bones for this episode. What would Formula E be like if we could rewrite the rules? And what is the future of Formula E? Hopefully we've answered that a fair bit. You know, obviously we've not covered everything, but I think we've covered a fair amount. I haven't spoke about drivers too much and teams too much, potential teams. I know that's something that you guys probably would have liked me to talk about, but I'm thinking in the future that would be a nice topic to talk about someone else who I think are the best drivers in Formula E, the best teams, who I think would make a good fit into Formula E that's currently in Formula 1. All those sort of things I think would be great to have someone else talking about as well as myself to get a mixture of opinions. But before we go, in the second ever episode of the Formula E show, something else I wanted to quickly go over, and that is a preview for the Paris E-Prix. No race last weekend, but this weekend we're back in Paris for the third time. Will we see a third different winner? The first race in Paris was won by Lucas di Grassi, then by Sébastien Buemi. Will it be the turn of the Frenchman, Jean-Eric Vergne? That's who my money's on. That's my prediction for this weekend. Pole and the race win for Jean-Eric Vergne is what I'm going to guess. I'd love to know your predictions down in the comments below. New driver as well this weekend. Luca Filippi is out and there's a new boy in at Neo, so keep an eye out for him. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, which is not good. But I'm really looking forward to this one. I really am. This one could be a lot of fun. Paris is a race that I've enjoyed the first two seasons. Not been the best of all time, but I think last year's race in Mexico, which was probably the best of all time, was best because of crashes. So a race can't control that, but it's Ma King Hua who is getting the Neo drive, so that's why I couldn't remember it. It's a very interesting name, for sure. Very difficult to pronounce and remember. So really looking forward to this Paris E-Prix. That is on Saturday at 3 o'clock in the UK on Channel 5, which is a Freeview TV channel, which so many people ask, how do I watch Formula E? And that is how. It's Freeview. Channel 5 Spike, I believe it is, this weekend. You can also watch it, I believe, on 5 Demand, I think it's called, online. That's for free as well. Would really recommend it. Championship is really hotting up now, and it seems to be a straight fight now between Vergne, Sam Bird and the outside chance of Felix Rosenqvist. So it's going to be a good one this weekend. Hopefully you've enjoyed this second episode of the Formula E show. Thank you so much for making it this far. Why have you made it this far? You've listened to me for all this time. You're a hero. Thank you so much. Hopefully I said you have enjoyed. And if you want to be involved in the show or be on the show at any time, put it down in the comments below. I'm always reading, always watching. I try and respond in the first 24 hours. That's always sort of my plan. My goal is to respond in the first 24 hours as best I can. Like I say, if you want to be involved, I'd love to know. And maybe I can get you on. Plenty of spaces. Why not? The more opinions, the more people, the merrier. Thank you so much for watching again. If you could like and subscribe, that would be mental. And with YouTube just being YouTube at the moment, if you could click that notification bell, that would be very much appreciated by myself. Guys, you've been awesome. Like, subscribe, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.